Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Super cool to be here. Hello, everyone. And as you said, super cool to present in front of some of the other portfolio startups at Worth Capital. And it's just a good thing giving back, and especially when I can talk about a topic which I love so much, which is, of course, growth hacking, how leading startups scale using a data-driven approach. Give me a quick thumbs up if you actually see my slides. Loading. Okay, I see a bunch of thumbs up, so that's very cool. But yeah, today the topic, hey, how are leading startups actually scaling using a data-driven approach? What does that actually mean? And I keep it very short about myself. As Alexandra already said, I used to be the head of growth at Beekeeper prior to founding Real Growth Hacking, and prior to that, I was working in venture capital in Silicon Valley, and even prior to that, I had my first own companies in the HR tech. And basically over the past 7 to 8 years, like this topic, data-driven scaling, growth hacking, was what interested me tremendously, and which was also the reason why then back in 2021, I founded Real Growth Hacking, which we call a startup-based acceleration, a growth hacking-based acceleration platform, with which we actually help companies to scale their businesses. And with that, actually, I hand over to David and a quick introduction from your side.
Yes, thank you, Joel, and hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited to talk about our experience that we had with Real Growth Hacking. So I'm responsible for digital marketing here at WINGTRA. And before that, I had various positions in different areas of digital marketing. I was doing conversion rate optimization for a big e-commerce company. I also worked for smaller web agencies where I was project manager and SEO consultant. And I also spent a few years doing content management.
Cool. Thank you very much, David. Yeah, so the question we'd like to answer today is how? How did actually these companies, these logos you see here, scale successfully? We see here some of the major brands in the software, in the hardware scene. What has been the thing that really made them successful? And although those companies are quite different, when you take a look behind the scenes, you can actually see that a lot of those companies have the same mindset. It's even the same people that sometimes moved from company to company, applying the same mindset and the same tactics and the same frameworks again over and over to make those companies successful. And before we jump right into this, there's definitely one thing those companies also did very, very well. And this is that they were very well aware of the stages that startups are in, so the different growth stages. So when we take a look at the growth of a startup, it's always like a little bit an up and a down, and overall we differentiate between the three main stages. Product market fit, where it's really about finding a product that fits to a market where people buy your product and they also stick with it. Once you have found that, scaling and traction, which is about scaling up what works, and then once the market gets saturated, you go into expanding and innovation to try win additional market share. And one thing those companies definitely all are doing very, very well is they are completely aware in what kind of growth stage they are. Because depending on the growth stage, there are different goals and different milestones and different tactics that come with it that you actually apply to bring yourself to the next stage. And while today we're going to mainly talk about scaling and traction, I want to take just a quick look at the product market fit stage to get a better feeling and understanding for it. And here I'd like to ask you the question, how many companies today are still their founder's vision from the early days? Right? Let's take a look at YouTube. Started as a dating site. Twitter was a podcasting network named Audio. Instagram, some app called Bourbon. Nintendo was like manufacturing playing cards. Slack was actually a gaming company, okay? So the entire chat function was just a side hustle of the Slack's gaming company that actually made them towards what they are today. And Beekeeper, the company I used to work for, was also a dating platform. So growth in this stage really means figuring out product market fit, okay? You're not focusing on acquisition in this stage because it can actually do more harm to your business than good, right? The key is really to stay open, to stay flexible, to test different hypotheses, to come up with a product that fits to a market where the users really stick with your product. And the only thing that truly counts is product market fit, not revenue, not scaling. It's about reaching product market fit. And once this stage is overcome, then we come into the scaling and traction phase, okay? And this is really what we're talking about today, meaning you have a product in the market, you have solid traction, you see a good hockey stick in your retention rate, meaning you attract users once they buy, they stick with your product. And now you know, okay, it's truly time to scale my business. And once a company is in this stage, I love to always share this quote from Benjamin Franklin, who says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." And it's exactly same in business as well. If I want to scale a company, I need to make sure that I really understand what is actually going on in my business so I can make the right decisions of where do I invest my limited resources I have available as a company to get the biggest bang out of the buck. And the first thing you need to do here is you need to be able to track what's going on in your business. And with tracking, I mean end to end, from the very first touch point a prospect has with your company, going through the entire marketing, sales, and product experience, all the way to becoming a customer, and even further referring to other people. And one framework a lot of leading startups use here is the so-called Pirate Metric framework. Okay, it has been introduced in 2007 by Dave McClure, and basically it tracks your entire user journey end to end. We start with the first question: how do customers actually find us? From what kind of sources do they come to us, right? How quickly can customers get to the aha moment, meaning the moment of value realization? This is the entire activation stage. Then retention, once they're activated, how well are they actually retaining with our product? Revenue, how can I make revenue and money out of them? And then the last stage, which often gets forgotten, referral stage, how can I even make more revenue out of my active customer base? So this is a model which is really important and which you'd like to apply in your business. And once you have that, then you really enter the phase of one-on-one scaling, which is the same principle all over. Okay, it's first measure. You can use the Pirate funnel for that. Identify your biggest growth levers. So out of all the options available, where should we invest our energy to really get the biggest bang for the buck? Set clear KPIs based on goals for the teams. Framework you can use there is the objective and key result framework, which we're going to talk about later. And then you go into the experiment and testing phase, where you actually try to improve those key metrics. And then after that, once you got the knowledge of what works and what not, you invest your time into scaling. So it's really about this little graph you see here on the right-hand side, right? If I'm a chaotic company and I don't give actually clear instructions and directions, and I also don't know what direction I should take, the energy is going into all kind of directions. But if I can read my data, I know what are the main objectives we should be working on, and I also rally and align my company behind that, then the energy that goes into this direction is way bigger. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So over the past, let's say 6-7 years, where I work with different companies and I coach companies in Silicon Valley, there are of course many different reasons why companies fail to scale. Okay, but after all, when we boil it down to around 4 main reasons, these are the followings which we see over and over again that happen when startups actually want to scale their business. And the first one, and I talked about that already before, is missing product market fit and unclear value proposition. So if I'm a company and I develop a product and now I say I want to scale, but I don't have product market fit, that's basically like trying to fill a water bottle that has holes inside. Everything I put into the top of the funnel, it just flows out at the bottom again, and I'm not actually really growing, okay? And although product market fit is often perceived as something like vague or not clearly descriptive, there are quantitative and qualitative frameworks which you can actually use to understand your degree of product market fit and also what you need to build to improve your product market fit. And very often with having not a clear like product market fit, those companies also have an unclear unique selling proposition, meaning they're somewhere in the market, but they don't really understand what their USPs are. And with that, don't take in a clear position in the market where they solve a specific problem for a specific niche of this market. And that, of course, leads to not well working conversion rates in your sales experience. Once companies overcame this, then the second reason why many companies fail to scale is not having a data foundation. So that's what I just showed you before with the pirate funnel. When I want to scale, I need to know what's happening in my company so I can ensure I focus my attention on the right KPIs. So that's very, very important. If you start scaling without knowing what's actually going on in your business, you might start investing in different channels or certain stages of the funnel, but you're actually not getting any feedback towards how effective is this, or is this actually truly the problem I solve? The third problem we often see is bad alignment between strategy and operational planning. So companies might have a financial plan or an overarching strategy or maybe a goal where they want to go. And this goal they actually only defined because they had to set up a financial plan to get funding. But after that, they kind of stop and they don't translate this into an operational plan that tells me when I want to reach 5 million ARR in 3 years, how much input, how much traction from what kind of department do I already create today, tomorrow, the next quarter, so that I really truly reach this milestone. Because if I have a proper data foundation and I know where I need to be 3 years from now, I can use something like a growth input model that tells me today how much top of funnel traction do I need to create, how many people do I need to hire, so that reaching this goal actually becomes realistic and an operational plan. And the fourth and the last one, which is also very important, is that many companies that start scaling don't have a professional framework to experiment, right? And if you act data-driven, if you know what's happening in your company, if you set KPIs to reach as a goal, then experimentation becomes very natural. We're anyways experimenting all the time, trying different product experiences, trying different channels. But the difference here is either I do that in a professional manner and employees and people know how to conduct experiments and how to do that at scale, so they learn very quickly, or they don't, right? And many mistakes might happen, or they're just slower in learning. So those are the four main things that we often see when startups want to scale. And with that, I hand it over to David for a quick reality check as we started working together at WINGTRA last year. David, out of your perspective, what was the situation of WINGTRA in regards to those four main challenges I just outlined?
So basically, I would say, without knowing it, we had to improve in all of those areas at different levels. And those modules helped us to improve in really all those regards. I would say the most challenging one, and we knew it from the beginning, was the data foundation, because we basically have a huge network of resellers around the world that resell our product, which is great because we can leverage their audience and their customers to sell our product. But the problem was that we had no visibility and no end-to-end tracking and no visibility in our pilot funnel past the moment where we hand over leads to those resellers. So we had a big black box in our pilot funnel of data, and finding a solution to understand if pouring more resources or budget in a specific channel was useful or not until we get there. Yeah, that took us a lot of time to fix that problem.
Out of the other challenges which I outlined before, have there been any that were surprising to you that you were like not aware of in the beginning, but that actually turned out that you also need to fix that?
I would say, yeah, the measuring of the product market fit. This is something we knew our customers loved our product. We just didn't know if there was a specific segment that liked it more than others. And we were basically spending our resources and time targeting a lot of different industries and a lot of geographical regions instead of being very clear on who we're targeting. And yeah, the first point, the missing PMF and the unclear USP was very surprising to me and a very good learning.
Cool. Thank you, David. I'd say that actually brings us to the next point, right? And that is, if you want to scale as a company, you really need to go through these steps, right? If you're aware of it or not, you need to have product market fit and a clear USP. You need to somehow track what's going on. You need to somehow define a strategy, and then you need to start also experimenting and actually see if that works out, right? So if you're aware of it, if you plan it or not, these are the stages you will go through as a company. And to make that easier for startups and our clients, we basically develop this step-by-step system where we actually go through module by module, building exactly up those foundations. And with the first module, once you are in this stage as a company, there's certain key foundations which you need to build, right? First of all, if you want to scale as a company, you should set up a cross-functional team that consists out of marketing, sales, and product people in your company that together are responsible for the topic of growth, right? Because growth is not coming just from sales, it's not coming just from marketing, it's not just coming from product. It's only if you have a holistic perspective on your business and really understand what do you need to build to scale the business. It's very important that you create a shared reality for this topic within your company to avoid scenarios where if you're a bigger company, the CMO wants to go in this direction, the chief sales officer in the other direction, and the product leader even in another different direction, right? So this is something very, very important you should install in the beginning. The next point then is you want to measure product market fit, right? And there are two things on how you can do that, and we're going to deep dive later into this. But the first one is a qualitative framework. For example, the product market fit survey by Sean Ellis, which is a framework you apply to conduct interviews with your users, and you ask them how disappointed would they be if you can no longer use your product. And because this survey has been conducted several thousand times of different companies, you know that if you get back a score of around 40%, it's a strong sign for product market fit. But even more important than the rating is actually the learnings you get from the users. And by segmenting those learnings, you exactly get an understanding and a feeling for it. What are the product changes you need to conduct to actually improve your product and get closer to product market fit? A part of the qualitative framework, you should also apply a quantitative framework. And there we always work with retention analysis, okay? Meaning, if you take a look at your user retention, what you want to see is you want to see a hockey stick. Meaning, out of the users that all started in day 0, on average, how does their retention actually evolve over time? And whenever we see a hockey stick movement, which is basically a drop in the beginning, but then the curve flattens out, this is a sign for product market fit. It means that out of all the users, at least a certain segment realizes meaningful value with your product, so they stick around and also come back. And the third and last thing you also want to do in this stage is you need to have a laser sharp value proposition and messaging, okay? So a clear position in the market that differentiates you from your competitors, and then also derive messaging that is aligned with this. So now we hop into some implementations by WINGTRA, how they did it and what they learned by doing this.
Yes, so as you mentioned, for us, it was very, very important that we had in the same meeting top-level management, so people who have the strategic vision for the company, marketing, sales, and product, because each of those departments are responsible for different parts in the funnel. So marketing usually for acquisition and activation, sales comes in the middle of the funnel, and product for customer retention. So it was very important that we have all those people together that are also able to take decisions, and so that we are all on the same boat, understanding what growth hacking is and why is it important. And we had every 2 weeks bi-weekly meetings with Joel and his team. So basically, we had the right people who were able to decide and execute the coaches every 2 weeks. So that really helped us to progress very fast on this topic. And the first measures that we took was a product market fit, so survey. So as Joel mentioned, this is a standard survey that we send to all of our customers. And we had 90 responses. And from there, we learned that we actually have a very high product market fit score across all the industries and segments that we serve, actually, of average of 74%. But there was one industry that was sticking out, which is the mining and metal industry. And we kind of had the feeling for it, but this is really proof that our customers in that industry really love and really need our product. And this is a very important information that will help us later shape our beachhead strategy. I think this will come later in the presentation. The second thing that we did was working on our USPs. So this is something we've been working a lot in the past few years, but we did it for the first time in this way, that we listed all the different benefits that we and our competitors advertise, and we had a column for us and for each of our competitors, and we here rated each benefits for us, but for our competitors too. And then we realized that there were some USPs that we were advertising that were overlapping with our competitors, that were in that sense not really unique. And we also realized that in the past few years, the industry that we're in matured, and that some competitors catched up on some USPs that we had in the beginning. So it was really good to do that exercise to see what is standard across the industry, and that we should actually not actively communicate about because it's expected by customers, and what is actually make us stand out. So in this case, we found out that we are the only drone that is really easy to use. And this is something that we kind of knew of, but we were not actively promoting. And then what the PMF survey here was very useful, because in the survey, we asked our customers, what did they like the most about our product? And we could cross-check, are those benefits, like ease of use, really a USP? Is it something that customer value or not? And we found out that the USPs that we could identify in this grid were the exact same that our customer valued. And that helped us then craft really 3 main USPs for product and the messaging that goes with it.
Cool. Thank you, David. Very, very interesting. So I would say after we took a look at the PMF and the USP, it was very clear for WINGTRA, they're ready to scale, right? From the PMF survey, the retention analysis, we knew, hey, their score is super high, right? They're ready for scaling. If a company would have a very low score, then we would need to reconsider, do we actually really want to start scaling, or should we rather invest more time into building a better product, right? In their case, it was very, very clear. And also with the USP, then it was not just an information for marketing, how should we adapt our messaging? Because realizing the USPs then also tells the company long term, where do I actually go with your product, right? Because you also, from the product side, you start investing more into those USPs, so you can actually also hold those positions and defend them long term. So WINGTRA was absolutely ready to then enter stage 2, which is creating the pirate funnel. And once you're there as a company, the key foundations you want to build there is definitely the pirate funnel model itself, right? So you need to understand really what is the pirate funnel model, what are all the different tactics in every single stage that you can actually apply to grow your business, right? As a side note here, a lot of people in Europe, they think scaling means I need to put in more top of funnel traction. In reality, many very successful companies like PayPal or Dropbox, etc., they actually grew because they have very smart systems in the referral stage or in the activation stage, etc., that actually help them to grow fundamentally. It's important to understand this model, and also how does every department how can every department actually contribute to this? Then, of course, you need to build it, right? You need to make sure that your CRM is correctly set up, that you can track the sources leads are coming from, and that you not just track them top of the funnel, but that you can actually track them throughout the entire funnel. You need to set up proper life cycle stages like lead, MQL, SQL, opportunity, etc., alongside with a solid industry standard. And then the most interesting part is eventually you need to build a custom lead source tracking system so that you can also really truly track all the different channels you are using at the company, how are those leads coming in, and how do they flow actually through your system. The overall goal of this exercise is, of course, not just that we have the tracking, but then after that, that you as a company are able to identify the growth levers and any kind of conversion leaks you have. So I'm going to give you an example on how such a pirate funnel actually looks like in reality. But before I show you the data, quick high level overview. So I'm going to show you a data table, and what are you going to see is on the x-axis the different acquisition channels like direct traffic, organic traffic, outbound channels, and so on. And on the y-axis, the entire user journey, starting from traffic to becoming a lead, to becoming an MQL, and so on and so forth. The data top of the funnel in a, let's say, a usual B2B business, you usually collect that from Google Analytics. Then all kind of mid-funnel metrics you get from your CRM, product behavior retention you get from your product, and then referral metrics you usually again get from your CRM. Okay, so boom, here we are. This is how it looks, a pirate funnel in real. So as said here at the top on the x-axis, we have the different acquisition channels. On the y-axis, we have all the important metrics that matter to a business. Okay, so there are a bunch, but also not too many. You really want to limit it towards the metrics that truly matter to your business. And then now we really see here black on white. How is each channel performing? Okay, what's the conversion rate from lead stage to lead stage? Where's the most revenue coming from? What's the highest volume channel? What's the lowest cost channel? And once you have something as a business in front of you, you can really define, okay, what are the most important growth levers you should focus on at the business? So this is what we also started building up at WINGTRA. And now, David, I hand it over to you to share your learnings.
Yeah, so as I said before, this was our biggest challenge, the full tracking of our activities. We were basically only tracking a part of our channels, only inbound, which what most CRM do automatically, right? But we were not tracking outbound and other kind of channels. So we had to implement custom lead source tracking. We also identified that we were not using the standard lifecycle stages, so we had to clean our database and implement new lifecycle stages. And also our biggest problem was that as soon as we hand over leads to our resellers, then basically we had this black box of data where we don't know what happened to the leads. And we don't know if that leads turn to be a customer or produce revenue. The only thing we knew is that 2 months later, our reseller comes to us and says, hey, I sold 3 or 4 units, I need to reorder. So basically, yeah, we worked a lot on closing this data loop. Yeah, here's the results in HubSpot. So here we have for each stage of the funnel, we have a different graph where we can follow over time the number of leads, the number of MQLs, the number of SQLs that we have, and there are other graphs, of course, below for opportunities and customers. And each of these graphs is broke down into the different channels that we have so that we can really follow each stage of the funnel and each channel over time. And this is the end result, or half of the end results. This is our pirate funnel where we have each channels here, the different conversion rates for each channel and each step. The lower part is missing. It's because of confidentiality reasons, but basically now we're able to know for each of those channels how many leads turn out to be customers. And then we're able also to calculate if, for example, we need to pour more budget in advertising, if that actually turns out to produce customers or not. And from this data, okay, I want to be too fast. We were basically able to look, okay, which channels have the highest volume, which channel and should be where we should maybe improve the conversion rate along the funnel to have a big impact at the bottom. Which channel converts the best, but maybe doesn't have a big volume, so that we can pour more traffic into it. Which channel have the lowest cost of acquisition, and all along this funnel, which of those steps, where do we have conversion leaks, where do we have to take measures or do experiments to improve conversion rate. And this is basically then the results of this. So we put all of our findings on a matrix where we try to find out which measure would have the lowest, the highest impact, sorry, with the lowest effort. And basically we found out that the first would be to improve the conversion rate, because on the website, because we are really good at creating traffic, but less at converting those traffic into qualified leads. The second is that we found out that we were leaking in the stages from the moment where marketing hands on the sales to the leads to sales, and there was no follow-up until the customer stage, or no proper follow-up. And we also found out that we were spreading too much our efforts in too many industries. So concentrating our marketing and sales efforts into one industry and starting a beachhead strategy would probably make the most impact for us in our scaling efforts.
Cool, thank you, David. And with that, WINGTRA really concluded this module 2. They had for the first time this entire data set in front of us. It was quite hard to build. Also, to me, I would say one of the most challenging situations that we ever had to build a pirate funnel, because it was such a complex setup. But after all, nevertheless, we had this data set and we were really clear to define, okay, where should energy go, right? Because WINGTRA by now, David, you were what, 180 people or something already?
100.
100. Okay, so 100 people, and you can do so many things, right? But there we really understood, okay, for the company to grow, the biggest priority at the moment is increasing website conversion. This will just create the biggest amount of traction. While actually in the beginning, I remember our talks, we started our talks about how to create more traction, right? And then we realized we don't even need more traction. We have tons of traction. We just need to make more out of it, right? Cool, yeah, and with that, then basically we had the data understanding needed to make the next decisions, and with that we entered module 3, which was about growth strategy. So there's certain strategic foundations which you want to have in a company once you want to scale. You want to have a solid North Star metric, very, very important. Your goals should never be directly linked to revenue. You should have a North Star that measures the amount of value you actually provide to a customer, because only if you focus long-term on value, the business is actually successful. There are other things like the big, hairy, audacious goal. There needs to be a minimum solid financial plan. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the growth input model that really tells you how much input traction do I actually need to create to reach the goals we want. Ultimately, in this step, a company should have objectives and key results, meaning understanding their KPIs, and then pick certain KPIs, which we saw in the pirate funnel, and make them a priority on a quarterly basis, so the teams and the employees really know what they're supposed to work on, right? We never want to be in a space where I actually dictate people what they need to do. So it should never be build feature ABC or a launch marketing campaign ABC. It should always be increase this metric by that amount, right? Or increase the leads by that much percent. And then give the people the freedom, but also the authority to reach this goal. And this is then how efficiency is created within a company. So a few things we also added here on the WINGTRA side. We cannot cover everything, but David, a few things you'd like to highlight here.
Yeah, that's another very, very interesting tool that we got from this program is the growth input model. So basically know that we have all of this data where we know how many customers are produced by how many leads for each channel. We're able to reverse engineer this to create our goals for the future. So basically at the top, we put our revenue goal, and here also hidden because of confidentiality reasons. But basically, we put our revenue goal there. We know how many customers we need, or the average amount for a drone. And then we can basically calculate how many customers we need to reach that goal. And by using all the conversion rates that we calculated in Pirate Funnel, we can calculate how many leads or qualified leads we need to produce so that we can reach our revenue goals. And this is, I think, especially for me, I can speak for marketing, a game changer, because before we were setting goals, we just wanted to grow, but we were never really accountable for, let's say, the KPIs, because we didn't really know how to set those KPIs. And basically we know each quarter exactly how many leads we need to produce, and we feel much more accountable for it. Yeah, so to get to those goals, we basically then used the OKRs. So we put to reach those KPIs the three main measures that we had in the previous matrix. And yeah, as I said before, the team really feels the ownership of those KPIs now. And we are also better able to, like, since we have this tracking, we know during the quarter how we are doing, and we are also better able to influence those numbers during the quarter, and not only to react after the end of a quarter, why didn't we reach the goals? So that's the beachhead strategy tool that I was talking about before. So thanks to the PMF survey, we could identify which industry was particularly in need of our product, which is mining and metal industry in the US. And now we've been conducting a lot of interviews in that market, creating personas, and understanding the pain points of that specific industry and how they use our product. And from there, we're able to create or to shift all our marketing and sales efforts towards this market segment. We have better understanding of that segment. We have better marketing materials, etc. And we already feel now the effect of this focus on that industry by having better and more targeted digital advertising for that industry. We improve the performance of our digital advertising campaigns.
Cool, thank you, David. And I would say with that part, having that part concluded, then we really knew, okay, these are the biggest growth levers, right? We aligned the strategy with those growth levers. We set the OKRs. We defined a clear beachhead strategy to really like set focus on one industry and creating traction there way faster. And once really those three foundations are in place in a company, so the PMF, the USPs, the entire data part, the strategy, then you're really ready as a company to scale. Then you basically enter the experimentation phase. And key foundations you want to build there is you need to have a rapid experimentation process in place. So rules on how do I actually experiment in my company, in marketing and sales, in product, a process so employees can follow that and also conduct experiments at scale. And then we basically sit down, we take those OKRs, those KPIs that are the focus for the next quarter, and we create first brainstorming sessions where we created the first hypotheses and then actually derive experiments from that, and then get into a habit where we just start launching experiments as fast as possible to win the necessary learnings from our user base and our prospect or potential customer base to then really understand what changes need to happen so we can grow the company?
Yeah, so we've been running, I think, around 10 experiments on the website. For the moment, we focus only on the activation part of the funnel on the website, as we have enough input in terms of traffic. So we've done some A/B testing, and with 3 successful tests, we could have 65 more qualified leads per month, 100 more leads per month, thanks to just conducting those tests. So in that example on the left side, you see that we reduced the number of conversion options that the user has on our website, and that's proved to have a 57% increase in conversion rate. Yeah, some more learnings we had from testing. You don't know what's gonna work or not. You don't know what your user are gonna like or not. You're gonna be always surprised. There's also gonna be a lot of experiments that will fail or be inconclusive. So we have to be patient and keep trying, but it's worth it. And we also conducted a few qualitative interviews, and they were a really, really great way to find out some insights to create really successful experiments.
Cool. And with that, we really had the base to start experimenting, right? As you saw, first OKR was set around the website experimentation. This is basically where we started, but the goal is then to not leave it with this, but really enable an entire company, like all the teams within a company to conduct experiments for their own OKRs. And I say from there, WINGTRA went on to experiment more and more still to this day and learning from that. And with that, maybe David, back to you, going through this entire process, building those needed foundations, what were the main learnings you had on that journey?
So I think for us, I mean, most of those topics that we've been talking about were kind of lingering around in the company in different teams. I mean, we've been working on USPs, we've been working on tracking, and we've been doing A/B testing, etc. But what changed, I think, for us is to have this very structured and data-driven methodology to measure all of those areas and to be able to improve them. So for us, the brand audit and the new USPs, we already tested them, by the way, on the website, and we also here saw a conversion increase. The beachhead strategy that we're implementing now was a big thing. Having this end-to-end tracking is also very important, and also the experimentation framework and the way we have now to brainstorm about ideas and to put them in that matrix, or to classify which ones are going to be most likely the most successful, that made a huge difference from how we were working before. The second thing is the alignment of people in the company and the knowledge that we share, and then the common vision that we now have. Is very important, and products and other teams are also looking soon to implement the experimentation framework, not only marketing. And one random, maybe key learning that I had from the Bold program is that we were trying too much to strive for 100% accurate data. We wanted always highly significant results for experiments. We wanted 100% correct tracking, and then we realized that we were not getting where we were. And then in the end, it's better to have 80% accurate data and be able to take decisions on this than not having the end-to-end tracking, for example, and taking decisions on not on data, but on feeling or opinions. Yeah, so just want to thank you, Joel, for the program. For me, it was an amazing learning, I have to say, one of the best in my career.
Cool. Thank you very much, David. I think it was very interesting also to see WINGTRA, definitely a hardware company, and it's not just a hardware part, but also the complex setup with the reseller system that you had, right? And very cool to see that nevertheless, those steps of scaling a company, they really apply to many different businesses. Of course, certain things always need to be adapted and customized to every single business. But overall, if you want to scale, these are definitely the steps you need to take, right? So if you focus at your business or you hear maybe stories about other companies that scaled successfully, right? You often see those tip of the iceberg stories, the quick hacks, the cheap and free tactics that made companies successful. But true scaling is really about building the system behind it, all the things you don't see of the iceberg, right? So start with the measuring part, which you'll learn today, the pirate funnel, identify the growth levers, set the OKRs, experiment, learn what works, and then systemize this learning for the rest of the company, which WINGTRA is exactly doing right now. And then you basically hit the repeat button with the next OKRs and the next important KPIs that come up. Yeah, so if you liked what you heard today, if you think, hey, this is actually really something we also need to go more after, right? As mentioned, I mean, these steps are core. If you want or not, your company will go through those phases. But if you think that's something interesting, feel free to scan the QR code on the very left hand, and we can have a chat and also see how can we replicate this at your business. We also operate the biggest growth community in Switzerland. We have over 350 participants in that community, which is open and free to join, where we just exchange about any kind of topics in scaling and growth. And of course, if you also want to connect with David here on the very right-hand side, connect with him on LinkedIn to ask any additional questions you have. And with that, I would say we have a few minutes left to do an open Q&A round and ask any kind of questions you have, or maybe also give examples of problems you are facing currently.
Cool. Well, we're happy to answer a question if it's okay.
Sure.
So thanks. Yeah, thanks for presenting. I guess we're just curious, like just having watched this, how long did you spend on these like 4 modules? What was sort of the steps involved?
Yeah, so usually we say with a client, it takes around 3 months to build this foundation, whereas you should actually conclude the first 3 modules after 2 months and then have 1 full month of like get started with the experimentation, right? In WINGTRA's case, it's way larger company, right? You heard 100 employees. So there, after all, we worked together for half a year, right? Whereas the last months we also spent on experimentation. Maybe David, you have some insights from your side around the timeline. I think module 2 was took a lot of time to build the data foundation in your case, right? What are other things that took a long time?
Yeah, exactly. I would say this is definitely what took us the longest time, was the data foundation. I can imagine that in a company, for example, SaaS company, where you have more easier data tracking online, that you could reduce this number. We probably spend a month or 2 just on trying to solve the end-to-end tracking.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Good. Any other questions or inputs?
Joel, from my side, perhaps a question. First of all, thanks a lot for the presentation. Really enjoyed it. I learned a lot on kind of like what needs to be done, what are the problems. What are often, I mean, this is very cross-functional, involving many teams, also changing some things. it cannot continue as it has been done before. So there's also probably some internal politics and resistance often. So how do you how do you move forward with that, and how do you bring the entire company on board into this growth hacking mission?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? Like what to do if like the company should actually change, but it's a hard thing to do, or there is an open discussion about that. And I think the key to that is really that when we start working with a company, it's really in the first part, setting up this cross-functional team. And then first of all, create a shared reality of what's going on, right? So when we go through actually those steps with every module, there is around 1 hour of content coming with it, where the people really in depth learn the entire theory and the background behind this topic, so that afterwards you have this common understanding of, you know, how does it actually work? How does the reality look like? And once you have within the company this shared reality of how it should be done and how it is right now, then it's really only a discussion, okay, how do we go from there, right? And these are then always healthy discussions, because when the shared reality is the same, then it's just really, okay, what is like the different options and what is the solution we pick? And that really helps. And then also, of course, that in our programs, we always work together with like the leadership team, right? So you make sure you have like the right people from each department in the program, so that also like solid and fast decisions can be made.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. Okay, only a few minutes left. Yeah.
I would also have a question, but I want to give the portfolio companies the option to do so before I do. But if nobody has a question, then I will ask one. And it would be around, what is your recommendation in terms of the stage when a company should go through a program like this one, or through a process like this one? Because obviously WINGTRA was 100 people when they started, but then I know you also work with you know, smaller teams. When's the right time to do this?
Absolutely, yeah. So I would say like company size is not very decisive, but more the stage, right? Like a company's ready once they want to scale, meaning they're post product market fit. They have a product out in the market, they have first traction, first customers, and they also realize those customers, they don't leave, right? So they stick with us, they get meaningful value out of what we actually sell them, and it's something which we can scale, right? The company should definitely not be founders-led only anymore, because then the resources are very limited and you cannot really scale up marketing or scale up sales. So there needs to be like, you know, first employees in the company. I would say if you have between like 8 or 10 companies, there's like the smaller size of customers we have, right? Plus the product market fit part, then you're ready to start scaling, right? So our customers usually start on the lower end in that size. Yeah. There are sometimes some companies that are a little bit earlier. Let's say they're maybe past the first steps of the PMF stage, now more working on their go-to-market, right? Building up their first channels. That also works, right? If we see that the right foundations are there, then we would just shift a little bit the attention, because we definitely need to build also a solid tracking, but the data foundation will not be that big yet, because there's not that much data available. So then we just shift a little bit the attention and the time we spend with each module, basically trying to get faster in a stage where we can actually build up and test first channels, define the marketing processes, define the sales processes, so that they're ready to scale.
Thank you.
Cool. Good. I would say, yeah, if there are no questions left, thank you very much for being here today. And if any other questions come up, I guess we're going to send the slides anyways in the follow-up email. And also always feel free to reach out to me or to Andrea or to David through LinkedIn or through our website if you have any questions.
And thank you from my side as well a lot. Like, I really like the back and forth between you guys, also showing the process, but also showing how it worked. I think that's super helpful. So thank you everybody also for joining today. And we give you 1 minute back. And thanks for taking the time. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.